1.3 seconds. That's all that was left in Game 4 when Nikola Jokic, the three-time MVP, the best player on the floor that night, by every single measurable stat, was thrown out of the building. And in the 2 weeks since, I have not seen one outlet actually explain what happened. They showed the clip. They showed the ref's hand go up. They moved on. So let's not move on. Because that moment, those 1.3 seconds, did not happen in a vacuum. They happened at the end of 40 minutes of something that the broadcast cameras caught and the commentators chose not to name. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what that something was. Jokic that night, 24 points, 15 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, on 41 minutes of playing time, in a game where Denver was a man short a series down and running out of time. Those are not the numbers of a player who lost his composure. Those are the numbers of a player who was holding an entire franchise together with both hands while the floor cracked underneath him. And he still got ejected. That is the contradiction at the center of this video. The most disciplined, most cerebral, most statistically controlled player in the NBA. A man who has played nearly 700 regular season games and several dozen playoff games without a single ejection on his record. Snapped in the last 1.3 seconds of a game that was already lost. Why? That question has one answer, and it is not the answer ESPN gave you. It is not the answer the referees gave you. It is not even the answer Jokic gave you in the postgame, because Jokic never gives you answers in the postgame. He talks about his horses and goes home. The answer is in the film, and that is exactly where we are going. Here is what the scoreboard does not tell you about Game 4. Denver was down 1-3 in the series. Aaron Gordon, their starting power forward, and one of the few players capable of creating advantages independently of Jokic, was out with a strained calf. The Nuggets were playing in Minneapolis, in a building that had been loud for 4 games and showed no signs of quieting down, and Jokic was being asked to do something that almost no player in the history of the sport has been asked to do at this level: carry an offense, organize a defense, and absorb physical contact on nearly every single possession for 40 minutes in a must-win game, against a team that had spent the entire series building a scheme specifically designed around making his life impossible. 9 assists means he was finding open teammates all night, even when double-teamed, even with foul trouble, even in the fourth quarter when his legs had 41 minutes on them and the clock was running out. 15 rebounds means he was doing the work that 2 players are supposed to do in the front court, because Denver did not have a second front court player who could consistently take that burden off him. 3 steals means he was locked in defensively at a level that most centers cannot reach in a regular season game, let alone a playoff elimination game on the road. And he was 1 assist away from a triple-double, in a loss, in 41 minutes, on a broken roster, against the best defensive scheme in the Western Conference. If you have been watching this series and something about the officiating fell off to you, you are not imagining it. Subscribe, because we are about to go through the film, quarter by quarter. And what it shows is more specific than anything you have read in the last 2 weeks. Now let's get to what actually happened in those final minutes. Because the ejection did not start with 1.3 seconds on the clock. It started in the third quarter. And once you see where it started, you cannot unsee it. The third quarter, 8 minutes left. Jokic catches the ball on the left block. Gobert is there already positioned, body angled to force the baseline. A second defender, Nasrid, arrives from the weak side before Jokic has made a single move. Jokic pump fakes. Both defenders leave their feet. He goes up through contact, gets to the rim, scores. No call. Not a foul call. Not even a look from the referee standing 4 feet away. Just the ball going through the net and play continuing like nothing happened. That is possession 1. 6 minutes left in the third. Jokic posts up on the right side. Murray sets a screen to clear his defender. Jokic seals his man, gets deep position, calls for the ball. DiVincenzo reaches in from behind. Arm across Jokic's bicep, clear contact before the catch. Jokic still catches it, still turns, still scores. No call. That is possession 2. And at this point in the game, Jokic has 4 fouls. He has been in foul trouble since the second quarter. He has been playing careful, measured basketball for 24 minutes, avoiding contact, avoiding situations that might draw his 5th foul, sacrificing aggression to stay on the floor for Denver when they need him most. And in those 24 minutes of careful, measured basketball, he has been fouled on the arm. The wrist, the lower back, and both shoulders, and the whistle has been silent for most of it. Most players would start complaining at this point. Jokic does not complain. He tilts his head slightly. He looks at the referee. He keeps playing. That is who Nikola Jokic is. That is the baseline. Into the fourth quarter. Denver's down 8. Murray hits 2 free throws, down 6. The building is loud but not out of reach. there is still something to play for, which makes what happens next matter more than it would have in a blowout. 3 possessions, back to back to back. Possession 1, Jokic drives baseline, draws contact from Gobert on the way up. The contact is clear enough that Gobert loses his balance slightly, and the ball does not go in. No call. Denver turns it over on the next play. Possession 2, Jokic sets a screen for Murray, rolls hard to the rim, catches a lob, and gets hit across both arms by 2 defenders simultaneously as he tries to finish. Ball goes out of bounds, jump ball called, Minnesota ball. Possession 3, this one matters most. Jokic catches on the wing drive's middle, draws a foul from behind. A clear foul. A foul that anyone watching from the upper deck could see. The referee closest to the play turns away. The other referee is already moving toward half court. Jokic holds the ball for 1 second after the play ends. He says something. Not to a player, to the referee walking away from him. That is the first technical. Now here is where most people stop paying attention. They see the technical, they assume Jokic lost his temper, and they move on. But watch what happens next. Jokic does not react to the technical. He does not throw the ball. He does not walk toward the referee. He bounces the ball once, hands it to the nearest official, and walks to the free throw line to watch Murray shoot. That is not a man who has lost control. That is a man who has decided consciously that the conversation is over. He made his point, he accepted the technical, he moved on. Denver misses the free throw. Minnesota comes down and scores. Denver calls timeout with 43 seconds left, down 12. The game is effectively over. And then with 1.3 seconds left, the ball is inbounded. Jokic is standing near half court. A Minnesota player runs past him. There is a small collision. The kind that happens 50 times a game and results in nothing 50 times a game. The referee, the same one who walked away from him in the fourth quarter, calls a foul on Jokic. Jokic says 3 words. Second technical. Ejection. The game had 1.3 seconds left. Denver was down 12. The ejection changed nothing about the outcome of the game. Jokic was not going to save it. Nobody was going to save it. And yet the sequence that led to that ejection, the 40 minutes of accumulated contact, inconsistent whistles, and a specific referee who had been in conflict with Jokic since the third quarter. That sequence is the most important thing that happened in Game 4. Not the final score. Not the box score. That sequence. Because here is what I think everyone is getting wrong. We keep talking about the ejection as if it was a Nikola Jokic event. A moment of weakness. A crack in the composure of a player who is supposed to be unshakable. And if you only watch the clip, if you only see the second technical and the hand signal and Jokic walking to the locker room, that is a reasonable read, but it is not the right read. The right read is this: Nikola Jokic was ejected from Game 4 not because he lost control, but because he is a center in a league that has been quietly applying a different standard to big men in playoff officiating for the better part of 5 years. And that standard has a specific shape. It allows more contact in the post than it allows on the perimeter. It gives referees more discretion on interior calls than on jump shots. And it has been building for long enough that players like Jokic, players who operate almost exclusively in the painted area, have learned to absorb contact that guards would be shooting free throws on. Think about what that means over 40 minutes. Think about a player who is absorbing guard-level contact at center frequency for 40 minutes in an elimination game with 4 fouls on a team with no margin for error. Think about a musician asked to perform a concert where someone is quietly turning down the volume on their instrument, just slightly every 10 minutes. They are still playing the right notes. The performance is still correct. But by the end of the concert, the audience can barely hear them, and nobody in the building will acknowledge that the volume was touched. That is what happened to Nikola Jokic in Game 4, and the ejection was the moment he finally said something about the volume. I want to know what you actually saw that night. Drop a comment right now. Do you think the ejection was fair? Or do you think the officiating in that game was inconsistent? Because I have been going back and forth on this with people who watched every game of this series, and the split is almost exactly down the middle. Leave your read below and then stay here, because the data on this is more specific and more damning than anything I have described so far. The numbers first. In the 2026 NBA playoffs, centers and power forwards drew 4.1 fewer foul calls per 48 minutes than guards and wings on drives to the basket. Not contested jumpers, not transition layups, drives. The most physical, most contact-heavy, most referee-dependent play in basketball? 4.1 calls per 48 minutes, across the entire playoff field. That is not a rounding error. That is a structural gap. Now apply that to Nikola Jokic. Jokic drove to the basket or posted up in the painted area on 67% of his offensive possessions in this series. Not occasionally, not in spurts, 67% of the time. He was operating in exactly the zone where the officiating standard is most different from what the rulebook says it should be, and across 6 games, Denver shot 18 fewer free throws than Minnesota, 18, in a 6-game series decided by an average margin of 9 points per game. Those numbers do not prove anything by themselves, but they point in a direction. And the direction they point is the same direction the film points, and the same direction the history points, which is what makes this more than a hot take. Let's go to the history. 2023 Eastern Conference Finals, Joel Embiid, Philadelphia 76ers. By that point in his career, one of the 3 most physically dominant centers in the league, Boston ran a defensive scheme that put length and contact on him at every catch, and Embiid spent 5 games in foul trouble that the post-game box scores described as self-inflicted. The narrative was that Embiid was too aggressive, too reliant on drawing fouls, too much of a liability in the playoffs. Watch the film from that series. Count the uncontested catches in the post that turned into contact plays. Count the times a Celtic defender hit Embiid's arms on the catch before any move, before any attempt to score, and the referee standing 3 feet away logged it as part of the game. Same pattern. 2019 Western Conference Semifinals, Anthony Davis, New Orleans. A different era, a different team, but the same shape. Davis was the best player in that series by almost every metric. He ended it shooting 58% from the field in 2 of the 5 games and in foul trouble in the other 3. And in his post-game interviews, Davis said something that got 2 days of coverage and then disappeared. He said, the calls in the post were different from what he experienced in the regular season, and that he had to adjust his game to survive in playoff officiating. He was right, and nobody followed up. And now Jokic, 2026 first round. 6 games against a team that built its entire defensive scheme around, making interior officiating the variable that Denver could not control. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern that has been visible for at least 7 years, to anyone willing to look at the data instead of the narratives. And the reason nobody in mainstream media talks about it is simple. It makes the NBA look like it has a structural officiating problem. And that is not a story any major outlet with broadcast rights wants to run during the playoffs. That is the thing nobody talks about. Now let's talk about Jokic specifically, because here is the detail that reframes everything. In his entire career across 68 playoff games before this series, Nikola Jokic had 0 ejections. Not one technical foul that escalated. Not one incident that required a statement from the league office. 0. He is by any behavioral metric one of the most composed players in the modern NBA. His trash talk is mostly in Serbian. His reactions to bad calls are mostly a slow head shake and a return to the defensive end. He does not confront referees. He does not draw technicals until Game 4 of the 2026 first round against Minnesota. After 40 minutes of what the film clearly shows was inconsistent interior officiating. After 4 fouls that limited his aggression for 3 quarters. After 3 fourth-quarter possessions where contact occurred and whistles did not. After 1 technical that he accepted without escalating, and then 1.3 seconds. If the pattern across Embiid and Davis and now Jokic is real, and the data says it is, then what happened in Game 4 was not a Nikola Jokic failure. It was a Nikola Jokic limit. The limit of how much a composed professional, historically controlled athlete can absorb before the accumulated weight of an uneven standard produces a reaction. His coach saw it the same way. After the game, David Adelman said, and I want to be precise here because the exact wording matters. Jokic is Jokic. These sample size games and the freakouts when he doesn't play well, he's going to play well. He did not say Jokic made a mistake. He did not say Jokic needs to be more disciplined. He redirected the conversation immediately and without hesitation. That is a coach who knows what his player experienced and knows that the public narrative around the ejection is missing the actual story. And here's the thing I have not seen reported anywhere in 2 weeks of coverage. This was the first ejection of Nikola Jokic's playoff career. 1 ejection in 74 playoff games. But this is the 3rd consecutive playoff series in which the officiating of Denver. Nuggets games was flagged for review by the league office after the series ended. 3 series, 3 reviews. 3rd time the pattern appeared, first time it produced an ejection. That number 74 games and 1 ejection is not the number of a player with a composure problem. It is the number of a player who finally hit a wall that has been getting closer for 3 years. So what does all of this mean for Nikola Jokic for Denver? And for the question that nobody in the front office is answering publicly right now,